Hey gang, Aaron here. I wanted to do a quick video for you about something that I am very passionate about, and I think a lot of new podcasters need to learn, and that is how to do artwork for your podcast. Now, the first thing that you need to keep in mind is that you have a square that you fill with your artwork, right? And that square, the bigger you make it right now, the better you're going to have a chance of using it in all sorts of different places down the road. So don't start with something really small, because what's going to happen is you're going to be limited by the size of that object. When it comes to images on the internet, those images have a max size. And if they go beyond that max size, then they start to look pixelated. They start to have those little squares and look sort of like an old Mario Brothers game, because you're stretching it so far that now you can actually see the individual square pixels in the artwork. So the bigger you start, the better. My recommendation is to set up whatever file you're working in, whether it's Photoshop or Illustrator or MS Paint, set it up at 3000 by 3000 pixels. That'll get you a really good sized image. You can scale that down for lots of marketing stuff, but it's big and nice for some of the platforms like Apple that require a much bigger piece of art. Second thing I want to point out, you have to keep it simple. I know that you've poured a lot of passion and excitement into your show, and what you want to do is fill that square, especially when it's blown up really big on your computer, and you want to fill it with, all sorts of graphics and images and textures, and all of a sudden it's got 15 different things going on in it, and that's not good. You have to remember, for most people who use a podcast app on their phone, and that's the primary place people are listening, they're looking at that thing about the size of your thumbnail on their screen. No one is ever going to see it. Now, connected to that, another design rule that's really good to follow is this idea of contrast. Think about black and white. The reason why you see white text on a black background is because there's a high amount of contrast between black and white. If you put dark red on a purple background, you are not going to see that dark red element as clearly, especially when it's shrunk down to the size of a thumbnail. That's going to help people recognize the title that's on your show art. It's going to help them recognize host names or any other important detail that's on there. But again, referencing the last thing we talked about, you're keeping it simple. So high contrast helps people see things. Last thing here, make your show title as big as you can. And this is where it gets tricky if your show title is like 5 words and it's more of a sentence than it is a title. I lucked out with Lore, because Lore is 4 letters, and when you lay them out in the right font, it's pretty square. So I can make that fill up as much of the square as I want it to. I also made that a very dark gray background with the super, super light gray, almost white font. High contrast, legible font. Don't go fancy. Don't go picking, I want this to look like, calligraphy script. People aren't going to be able to read that on the screen. They're not going to be able to tell what it says. Find something that's legible quickly, that cursory glance, and test it. Lay out your font, type in your show title and pick a font for it, and then glance at it really quickly to see if you can read what it says. And also shrink it down on the screen and see if you can see what it says. You're going to be surprised by how many times your design preferences get tripped up by these rules. But the rules are there for a reason. It's to help people who are scrolling through a directory on their phone or looking at a top 10 list or something, and they have this one moment, this heartbeat to recognize your name, so it gets embedded in their head and they remember it and they can go look it up later. You're going to lose that opportunity if you don't keep it simple. Start with a big canvas size, 3000 by 3000 pixels. Use high contrast between your background and your foreground elements, meaning your text. Use a legible font for that text, and try to make it as big as possible so that people looking at a thumbnail-sized image of your cover art can see it. That's my tip on podcast artwork. Go make your show art better, or build it for the first time with the right foundation. And it's going to pay off. It's going to help people remember and recognize and recommend your show. Thanks, folks. I'll see you next time.